Imagine someone is a 14-year-old girl. She comes home from school. It's 3:30 in the afternoon, and she arrives at home, and on her front door is a foreclosure notice. Imagine how scarring that would be for that 14-year-old girl. And imagine how scarring that would be for her mother, her father, her brother, her grandmother, her uncle. And to put that into context, back in 2008, according to the Wall Street Journal, about 9.2 million households were foreclosed during the housing bust. And if we want to do some quick back of envelope math, there's 2.5 people in a household, so now we're up to 23 million. And let's say that there's a grandparent, and let's say there's an uncle or an aunt. Now you're up to over 30 million. So think of 30 million people scarred by an experience of thinking that they own their home and then losing their home. Think of 30 million people out of a total voting group of 130 million people and what that might mean in terms of a political opportunity and potential disruption in the economic system. And really, think of those folks who believe that they've done everything right. What do I mean by done everything right? They've gone to school, they've had part-time jobs, they've been good people, they went to college or university, they graduated from college and university, they took on debt to do that, they got their first job, maybe it's not a great job and they're trying to work, but they still cannot make ends meet. And then think of these folks having a certain level of anxiety and disappointment, and then along comes a politician who basically says, you know what, you're doing everything right, but the system has let you down. Washington is corrupt. Wall Street is fixed. It's not your fault. We're letting people from outside of the country come in and they're taking your jobs. And then think of these people, these anxious, concerned, pessimistic people connecting with that politician and saying, you know what? It's time to have a little disruption in Washington or in the capital city. It's time to shake things up because the system isn't working. I'm doing everything right, but I'm still not getting a middle-class existence. You know, what's interesting is in the 1950s, Gallup did a survey, and they asked people, what level of education do you need to have a middle-class existence? Anyone want to guess? I don't know if I'm allowed to throw it to the crowd. Anyone want to guess that what was defined by Gallup as a middle-class existence? It included 3 things. Any guesses? Owning a house, owning a car, yes, and having a vacation. That was the definition of middle class. Vacation, car, house. So in 1950, when Gallup asked this question about what level of education that people needed to have this middle class existence, the level of education was high school, exactly. Fast forward, so think, in 1950, you'd graduate from high school, and then perhaps you'd be working in a bank as a loans officer, and you'd have a job. Or maybe you'd work as a manager of a men's or ladies' clothing store, and then you'd have a middle-class existence. So you'd finish school, you'd finish high school, there would be no debt, you'd get your first job, congratulations, you have your first job, and then even if it was a modest job, you start saving money. You'd start investing, right? You'd start building for the future, day one, out of high school. Now fast forward 50 years later, and when Gallup asked the exact same question, what level of education do you need to have a middle-class existence? House, car, vacation. And the answer is university. Except now, not only do young people have to go to school longer, they're coming out literally in the hole. They're coming out in debt. So it's not as if they come out and get the job that they want and then all of a sudden they start building their future. They start, many of them, not all, but many young people start on the negative side of the ledger sheet, just trying to get out from student debt before they can even think about having the type of vacation that their parents had, or owning a car, or saving the money to invest or to own a home. So you have to think of this particular frame, this economic frame that drives a lot of this behavior. And you know, even when you look at, for example, in the 5 years before the Brexit vote, you know, during the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom, there were 2 sides. The Remain side, which said, listen, look at how much we benefited from being in the European Union. Isn't the economy wonderful? And then the leave side, which wanted to get out. But in the 5 years before the Brexit vote, when you looked at the economic data, real wages went down 10%, the cost of living had gone up 22%. So here's where you get the disconnect, where the establishment is saying, look how wonderful everything is and how we benefited. And then for average people, especially if you're outside of the City of London, for average people, they're saying, I don't really feel that. I'm making less, and the cost of living is going up. So you have to think of that disconnect between people and how they feel and what the establishment, and when I say the establishment, it could be the government of the day, it could be the Bank of Canada saying, it could be the media, what they're thinking. And why I'm trying to draw this picture, because this is the frame that you have to think of in terms of people who are investors at different levels and who are consumers and who are aspiring to have that type of financial security.